Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being with us on this day. I have with me two very important people who are here to tell us what we can do about the creative economy and the creative sector in Kerala. Kerala Startup Mission has now embarked upon, I believe, a very prolific journey towards setting up the creative sector in the state. And that calls for a different kind of an ideology, a different kind of a thinking process, and a different kind of investment that is required to make this happen. So as I start today, I am proud to say that Kerala Startup Mission, with its investments and in its commitment towards the creative sector, with its last two conferences, and the future that it envisages for the state, we have ahead of us a huge new future in terms of what can come out of this particular area and this particular kind of thinking that is required to make things happen anew in Kerala. I have with me two very important people, and as I start towards talking about, if I'm right, a 5 trillion economy by 2030 is what is being talked about. I have Mr. Raghvendra Singh here. We met many years ago in New Delhi, talking about culture, talking about what is possible. And at that time, my interest, of course, was Kerala. I would like you to, with all experience that you have in the sector, in both, the cultural sector, the creative cultural sector, on what are we talking about in India at the moment when we look at this particular sector? What is the vision, and why are we talking so much about it? We're shifting focus from what is very generic in terms of what we see investments can do to a completely new but not so new sector.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Huddle Global. Gives me a platform to share my views with all of you here. So, creative culture economy is a very nascent field in India. Why do I call it nascent? When you go towards my right, you see a whole lot of small outlets, and they are all advertising things to do with technology, the innovation in technology, and there are lots of them. But till yet, I haven't actually seen any small outlet or stall trying to advertise things to do with creative culture economy. Now, I don't want this confused with what we are doing in hospitality or what we are doing with tourism. Because tourism and hospitality are growing on their own steam. Our own middle class, which is a huge middle class, gives fillip to this sector. But the creative economy sector, which is based on culture, is something which we really don't look into. Just to give you a small example, do we have any investment in the field of sector which is mainstream capital investment? I don't think so there is much. There is really no assessment made on sound returns of investment, and then you invest in it like the way you would invest in pharma or infrastructure or any of these sectors. So that is not there. Secondly, we do not also have a human resource in the field of culture. What I'm saying is that if you don't have medical colleges, how will you have doctors? And if you don't have doctors, you will not have hospitals, right? Similarly, if you don't have conservationists, if you don't have people to do with visitor experience, if you don't have curators, if you don't have collection managers, how will you be able to put up anything by way of, say, permanent exhibitions, by way of museums, by way of any experiential center or a cultural space? We actually lack cultural space. Even 1.4 billion people, and we can count on our fingers cultural spaces. I mean, okay, Kochi Biennale is happening, it's getting inaugurated, rolled out today, but it happens for a time and then it's gone. How many permanent cultural spaces do we have in our country? And see, this provides a lot of employment. So it's a service industry, and this is a clean slate is what I mean. And there is at this time a craving need from our growing middle class to look for things cultural in terms of a heightened experience, which we don't get. Just to give you one example, sorry, I'm taking more time. Just to give you one small example, and then I'll hand over the mic to you, is say you go to Banaras, Varanasi. Now, what do you think of Varanasi when you talk of that cultural space, one of the oldest living towns of the world? It's either the Aarti on the Ganga Ghat, or either it's the exotic feeling, by seeing the sadhus and what have you. But there is just so much more. There is poetry to it, there is literature to it, there is drama to it, there is cuisine to it. How welcoming is Banaras as a city? We don't have very many welcoming cities. So all these things actually need to be addressed when we address culture economy.
Yes, I do have one more question for you. You're talking about the culture economy. We spoke about Benares, and then Kerala has umpteen other examples that we can take on board and discuss. But when you speak about culture and we speak about things that are intangible, what kind of economics are we talking about? How does one connect this to the creation of money? And why would, how do we look at that? I think that is an area where people are still trying to figure out where this sits.
As I said, it's creative culture economy. So there is an element of innovation also involved. We actually do not have in the field of culture a proper professional company. I mean, a Section 8 or a Section 25 for-profit company. To give you another burning example, we have, I just actually did the Prime Minister's Museum in Delhi. And believe you me, who all were there who came in applying for trying to do those places? They were not at all into the museum. They were event managers. If I asked them, have you heard of Louvre? They say, what Louvre? I've never heard of Louvre. And those are the people through whom we are getting all our cultural spaces done. They are not professionally competent enough to do it. And to do a national museum in the north and south block of Delhi next to the Rashtrapati Bhavan in 2 years' time through these people, I mean, imagine you talk of world class, will you be able to do it? I have my grave doubts. So unless and until you create a sound professional base, create companies for particular jobs. If someone is into design, then he or she or the company is into it. So the moment you start doing those things, you will provide our youngsters lots and lots of opportunities. It's a win-win situation, and what they do and the capital investment which goes into it, and then the revenue model gets. So all these things are totally new to the sector of culture, and this is the time to get into it. There are 5 or 6 big players who are involved. I mean, people, I wouldn't mind naming them. There are people like Munjals, or people like Nadars, or people like the Ambanis, or Aisha people. Now, they are doing their best, but the whole thing needs to expand. The base needs to expand, and that is where Kerala can actually take the lead because Kerala, amongst all the states of our country, is the leader.
I have with me Mr. Sam Santhosh. I met Sam because of his endeavor to start a mini incubator at Kalamandalam. And as you know, Kalamandalam is a 100-year-old institute that works with performing arts. And Sam, when I met you first, and that was an online meeting, you talked about $1 trillion economy for Kerala. Can you tell me what you were talking about, especially with the experience you've had outside of India, and you've set up a very successful business model which brought in a lot of money. How do you view the two?
Thanks, Tanya. So maybe before I answer the question, I'll just give you a couple of caveats. One, when we talk here about the creative economy, the creative economy is a very large, like she said, multi-trillion dollar economy in the world. But here, our focus, or my focus, will be on a very small part of the creative economy. Because the creative economy includes movies, film industry, entertainment, a whole bunch of things. But here, as you said, our focus or me getting into this area, was more focused on Kerala history and culture. So Kerala history and culture is something which I'll get into more a little later. But so that is the first caveat. Second caveat is that many of you might be wondering also, like, what am I doing here? Because I've been an entrepreneur. I've built companies both in the software and genomics area. So I don't really qualify in any way to be in art, right, per se. But the last maybe 25, 30 years, I have been a very ardent student of Kerala history and culture, especially history. If I can just ask a question, I know before you guys go to sleep, can anybody tell me a good book on Kerala history? I can tell you, because I've explored that for many, many years, there's hardly one good book on Kerala history. Maybe it's due to geography or geology. We are at the end of the peninsula at the bottom end. By the time all famous big historians write the Indian history, we are a footnote. Starting from Delhi, when you come up to Kerala, we are lost. There's hardly anything about Kerala, very little about Kerala in what we learn in school and what we learn anywhere. Unless you take a real concentrated effort to get into Kerala history, you're not in Kerala history. Right? You know very little about Kerala history. But I did spend a lot of time on Kerala history. So one of my books will be coming out soon on Kerala history and culture. So I've been very passionate on not only of Kerala history, but how unaware Malayalis themselves are about Kerala history and culture. So another project that I've been working on is building up a botanical garden, again based on Kerala history. Kerala history, of much later history, 17th century, when the Dutch were here and they wrote the beautiful, important magnum opus called the Hortus Malabaricus. So the Hortus Malabaricus is a 12-volume book written in Latin. Hortus Malabaricus means Garden of Malabar. So Indians and Malayalis in particular, we are very bad about history. So we hardly know very little about even our plants. So and how it is being used. But luckily the Dutch were smart enough to create this book in Latin. So it sort of got lost over the last few hundred years. But then about 20, 30 years, Professor Manilal translated that into English and Malayalam. So we all got access to that. So my passion was to create this garden. So that is what a project I've been working on. A physical garden with all these plants. Sorry, the long story. But that brought me to Kalamandalam. Because this garden is in Cherudurthi, and that is just next to Kalamandalam, the garden, just a couple of kilometers. So that got me even more hands-on experience into how deep Kerala's classical art is, not only just the history, and how the history and culture are intertwined. And the sad fact that we have hardly made any use of it. With so little history, the Korea and so little history and culture, the South Korean pop culture and creative economy is over $100 billion, right? Without looking into movies, I'm talking about just about based on their history and the culture. So Kerala lacks a lot, but unfortunately, Kerala lacks a lot of effort now, but Kerala has a huge history and culture which is unmatched across the world. So we have a good potential to leverage that, and using institutions like Kalamandalam and Kerala Startup Mission, who will provide the framework for to incubate companies in institutions like Kalamandalam. Kalamandalam is not the only one, Kerala Kalamandalam. There are many more. So I don't think we'll have much time, but we can go into that at some other stage.
Sure. The timer isn't working, so if somebody could sort of tell me when when we are close to closing the session, it would be wonderful. I'm coming back to you, Raghvendra. You have been a specialist literally in museum, both in skill as well as in passion. And one of the things that Kerala Startup Mission did recently was to have meetings with museums in Kerala, look at all the problems that one faces, and then we sent out a call for startups who could help through technology to solve these problems. We're still working on it. It's still at its very nascent stage. So we're talking about technology. We're talking about a creative sector. We're talking about institutions like museums, which add, of course, to tourism and education and a whole gamut of things. Where do you see this, or how do you see Kerala Startup Mission and the very many startups that are there in this particular sector bridge this particular possibility? I know we've kind of deviated, but I'm going with your conversation.
Let me tell you, when I came here this morning and I saw the number of people who are here and the kind of exhibition of the startups, the new ones and the innovation, I don't think so. This kind of an effort or an initiative by any other government in our country is something which I have witnessed, including the central government. So it really gladdens my heart to see this kind of an initiative, this kind of awareness. Now coming down to the specifics of the creative culture economy and the subsector of museology, etc. Now, as I said, the startups should actually address various aspects of our creative economy. They should not only be incubators in as a non-profit organization. We should have as many of them possible in for-profit organizations to make the whole corporate structure a lot more professional from all angles, be it design. Now, design is an area which, to my mind, is completely overlooked. Whichever thing we design in terms of creative culture economy, whether it's a gallery, whether it's a visitor experience, whether it is content development, whether it is technology introduction in cultural spaces, we just don't have the capacity to develop a world-class product. Now, why is that so? Because the wrong kind of guys are, just to give you another example from the Northeast where I recently was, there is this huge cluster of Moga silk next to Guwahati called Swalkuchi. Now, I went there, fantastic production of Moga silk, something which is very rarely available. But then you go to the shops over there and you see the kind of products they are developing. It's the same thing which gets actually used up either in the domestic market traditionally, because, in weddings and other such events, functions, it is required. Otherwise, there isn't anything which can actually even come to Delhi and sell, forget overseas. So what I'm saying is that the design intervention can also help in handloom, handicraft, in GIs, in, one district, one product kind of a thing, agricultural products, whole, the canvas is just too large. So we should actually make a very concerted effort with what we are doing, expand it exponentially, and you will see in 3 or 4 years in Kerala itself the kind of impact it has made in the creative culture economy.
recently we had Prada, who people claim that our Kolhapuri was taken and branded in such a way that what was sold here for 1,000 rupees had a price tag of 1,00,000 rupees. So this is a conversation we had while over tea as well, this few hours ago, and that was about how do we take everything that is there in the creative cultural sector, how do we brand it and make it not just affordable for us and our economy, but also tap into the multi-billion-dollar economy that everybody's talking about in this particular sector. How do you see that?
Another example, when I was secretary in Textiles Ministry, someone actually told me immediately after I joined that there is an exhibition taking place on design called Maison un Objet in Paris, and I should go and see it. And I told that gentleman that, look, I've just joined, and if I go and, loaf around in Paris, there'll be a lot of criticism. So he says, no, you will not get a chance for another year, so you go and see. Anyway, I went, and it opened my eyes to the world of design and innovation. And this is basically to do with brands.
Right.
Now, there what I see is that India was completely missing. Rather, South Asia was completely missing. But all the themes which were there in all kinds of products were mostly 80% was South Asian, and by South Asian I mean Indian.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that the monies were being made by our themes being developed as products by all the Europeans and all the people from East, meaning Japanese and also.
I'm going to quickly jump to Sam because we've run short of time. Sorry about that.
Yes, of course.
Sam, you heard what Raghvendra said. Where are we missing the bus in Kerala? Or has the bus arrived at all?
No, I don't think we have missed the bus. I think we have reached a stage by which now there is enough, like he was pointing out, enough enthusiasm and energy, and the economy is big enough to now support the creative economy based on our
What
culture.
about the fact that we're talking about investments and a certain ROI is expected?
Yeah.
And that is something which is really very slow when we look at a non-technology based sector.
Yeah.
I know when technology comes and things can change, but how do you see that?
And I think it's a question of the putting the cart or the horse first, right? So first we have to really convince everybody that there is a potential for $1 billion industry, what you were saying earlier. Why? Because we have such unique culture in a 2,000-year-old history of protecting various art forms like Kudiyattam and things like that, which even the UNESCO has recognized now, which is not there anywhere in the world. But how do we now convert it into a product or a set of products that will have global acclaim? And what does the government do, and the entrepreneur committee and the investors do? Initial seed funding, so that these can be product ideas from startups, can be supported and built into a bigger level where it will attract larger funding. Right? So the government has to have a clear cultural policy to protect the IP, to protect and encourage the startups. We need to have really funding mechanisms, Kerala Startup Mission and NRIs like us. We need to put funds together, seed funds, and help these startups reach a stage where they can attract larger funds. Then the investors will come. But if you are expecting for the investors from the VC investors to come now and do that initial work, chances are low.
Right. That is a very important point. Thank you, Sam. I'm really afraid we've run short of time. So thank you so much for the inputs. We really request that we have support at the Kerala Startup Mission regarding the creative sector. All your intelligent minds and talent to come forth and help us build this together. Thank you.